Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nicky Vaux, and I'm your host. I am a boat owner, a marina owner, a director on the Marina Industries Association, and a huge advocate for boating. In this series, I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous. It's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there, enjoying the waterways. So let's let off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. So I'm very excited today because I have a very special woman to interview here. She's just got back from the Olympics and she's sitting in a hotel quarantine room. So we thought we'd all cheer each other up a bit by having a conversation. So Nick Douglas, welcome to the Boat Princess.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and bring a little bit of happiness during lockdown. I know that I'm in hotel quarantine, but I think that everyone around the world at some point in the past 18 months has gone through a trying time, at least one, be that to do with a loved one, first and foremost, be that to do with a career disappointment or maybe even having to change their career, be that having to change a passion or even be away from people that they love very much. So I guess being in 2 weeks of hotel quarantine is all relative, really, compared to what is actually going on in the big wide world, so to speak.
That's so true, and a very good way of putting it. I must admit, I sent Ian Murray a little message on the back of Instagram the other day to say thank you for the sailing teams giving us a bit of an uplift during lockdown in Sydney, because the old theory of blue mind and seeing water and so on, it was really exciting just to see the sailing, but also to have such success in it as well was just amazing. So you've just come back from that, covering that. Can you give us a little insight as to what you got up to?
Absolutely. It was a pretty amazing regatta. I might start with the harder bits first and finish on the good note, just because I think it was very different to what a lot of people thought. And as I mentioned, I know a lot of people have been through trying times and struggles lately. So I need to say up front, I don't think it's about comparing how tough things are. It's just been a tough old 18 months for everyone. So in terms of going over there, for the athletes especially, I think it was a really tough situation. No loved ones for them to lean on when they had a country leaning on them. As you've just mentioned, there were a lot of people's hopes and joys riding on the back of a whole bunch of people's successes. So for them to stand up and still perform when they didn't have anybody who they loved around them, I think was a real tribute to not only the actual performers, I'm going to say, performers and athletes out on the water, but their support staff like Ian Murray. So I'm so glad you mentioned him, because I think the support staff are the unsung heroes, so to speak, because it was also tough for them to be there holding those people up when they didn't have their loved ones around them as well. For everybody that went to Tokyo, we had to go through 14 days of mandatory quarantine over there as well. So 3 of those days were in complete isolation. And then I was able to go to my work, which was essential work at the venue, but we were all in bubbles. So when I was when I got to work, you had to go through security like the airport, and then I would have to go to my office and stay in my office. Sometimes on my walk to the office, I would walk past people that I knew, and I would be allowed to be like, hi, hi, from a distance. So that was incredibly tough. But then I would go up into what was called my crow's nest, so to speak, or what I called my crow's nest, which was up in this box that had been built for the broadcasters up in the top, or the SPP team. I was working with the sports presentation team. So I was up in my box, and a lot of the photographers and whatnot that I'd worked with previously from World Sailing started calling me Rapunzel, which was pretty funny because how have I not seen you yet? Let down your hair from up in that tower and let me come and see you. So, so it was a weird situation because I'm very much used to being at events where we get to go and say hello. And I think my role in the past, especially in sailing, has been to be that person that goes and says hello to everybody that we care about if we can't be there. So that was really tough. But something very special was that my job was to do all of the announcements at the venue. So I would start from 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd be doing announcements over all the loudspeakers at the venue and out to the big screen. There was a 50-meter long big screen, which was massive. And even though there couldn't be spectators at the venue, there were support staff and there were sailors and there were VIPs from the IOCs and the other member national authorities, the Olympic family, they call them, that were coming down every day. And it very quickly became one of the go-to locations for the IOC to come to. There was a waiting list for people to come to the VIP tent. So that made my job incredibly exciting. We had Thomas Bach one day, who's the president of the International Olympic Committee, I think at least one day, come down to watch the sailing. So I think the Finn medal race especially, he was there for that. So we had quite a few big names there. And so, that was my job. And on the Enoshima racetrack, the sailors kept saying that they could hear me from the racetrack when I was commentating as well. So I was commentating alongside the Japanese announcer. So I was the English announcer and commentator. Then there was a Japanese announcer and commentator, a Japanese, his name was Tomo, absolute legend, could pretty much do my job by the time we left. Gosh, he learned English quickly. It was really annoying.
Wow.
And then there was also a commentator in Japanese, Maiko Sato, who is a two-time Olympian for Japan. Yeah, in 2000 and 2004, and Nina Curtis, who I've sailed with quite a bit, silver medalist at the London 2012 Olympics. So she was the other English commentator. So during the racing, there were two Australian girls commentating on the racing, which was pretty awesome. And that's I know, great. And I know that a lot of the Australians said that it made them feel like they were, a little bit home, even though they didn't have people around them. And I hope not too many people listen to this and get any ideas about not employing me. But but apparently it was nice to have a little bit of home in the boat park, so to speak, having an Australian voice. So that hopefully gave a little bit of respite to the athletes and the support crews from Australia. But it was an absolute privilege to be there and witness some of the best sailing that I've seen in such a long time. You mentioned that I come from an Olympic background and I do love my One Design sailing so much. And but some of the highlights as well, seeing Mozambique have a great race in the 470 women, seeing the American Samoan team in the NACRA have an absolutely brilliant race. They led around the top mark in one of the races, and commentating that was so special. So seeing other nations have a bit of a step up and an ability to be there against the greats was also a beautiful moment, I think, and something very special. So, of course, I very much enjoyed seeing the wins as well, not only for the Australians, but for others that I know have worked so very hard. My Adventures of a Sailor Girl channel was still able to cover the sailing that was happening, which was pretty awesome. And
it was. I thought it was wonderful to see Australians who'd effectively already won, but they still didn't slacken off, did they? They went for first or second position anyway, coming through, and that I think that's Australian spirit shown right there.
Oh, absolutely. I was talking to somebody about that just moments ago, about in the medal race with the 470s, Matt and Will ducked the whole fleet essentially off the start line, started on port, did everything they could to stay out of everybody else's way and were still second around the top mark, and then just sort of went, oh, well, we may as well get out in front and then we won't be any trouble at all. So
because they could have taken the safe option and been very cautious and, okay, we don't want to, lose this, so we'll be cautious and just do everything perfectly so that we get through okay. But they didn't do that. They just went for it again, didn't they? God love them.
In trying to avoid trouble at the start, they ended up leading the race, which I just love. Absolutely talented humans. And again, as you mentioned, Ian Murray, the performance director. I mean, what a person to have as your performance director.
I know.
Australia had 2 golds out of 8 potential medals. We didn't have anybody in RSX or in RSX women. Yeah, another hard bit for me being at the Olympics was to not have my journalist hat on. I kind of struggled with that, as you can hear it pouring out of my mouth.
Yeah, you're really. I can tell you haven't been talking to someone for a while.
I know, right?
But it's lovely to see your energy and your enthusiasm still there. From how long have you been back now?
This is day 10 in quarantine. So
wow, see, that's amazing. You're still so excited about it, and that's brilliant.
Well, I do just love the Olympics. I mean, I wrote a blog on it on the day of the closing ceremony, and I did have to be very careful about what I did and didn't say whilst I was working at the Olympics, and I still want to make sure that I respect the Tokyo Olympic Games organising committee, who did a fantastic job of making this Olympics happen in really crappy circumstances, to put it mildly.
No.
So my hats are off to them and the Japanese people. They are, I just love the Japanese as
they're a beautiful culture, aren't they? Beautiful culture.
It was so funny because it's not the first time it's been said to me, but it had been said to me quite a few times. It's the 5th or 6th time, I've lost count, that I've been to Japan. I've been lucky enough to be there quite a number of times for my own sailing and also for covering other events. And I've had it said to me before, I think you were Japanese in a past life, Nick. and it was said to me again this time around, and I've made some lifelong friends that I worked with there as well. I know that they'll be friends for life. So, it was a pretty beautiful environment, but for them to still go ahead when, it's cost their country so much in terms of emotional cost and monetary cost and time. So my hats are off to them for actually making it happen. There's a lot of respect
worldwide for that, I think.
Yeah, and I think the world needed it. I know a lot of people.
Really?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are for and against, and I do not disrespect views either way. I think there's arguments both ways for whether it should or shouldn't have happened, but I think the world needed a little bit of hope. And I wrote a blog on the night of the closing ceremony, and I just said, I think when I was 10 was the first time I announced I was going to the Olympics. At that point in time, it was as a swimmer. I'm pretty sure a few months later, I also announced that I was going to star on Broadway. So,
that's a 10-year-old right there.
Exactly. So, but, we weren't scared to have these dreams, whereas I think the past 18 months have really squashed a lot of people, and we haven't been.
Why it was so important for it to happen, wasn't it? Yeah,
exactly. I think we haven't been brave enough to go, well, what if this and what if that, and maybe I want to go to Bermuda for a holiday, or and it doesn't matter what your dream is. I just think that a reason why we did need the Olympics was for people to see that dreams can still be realised and to understand that. But there is a potential way out of this, and I think the Olympics has always been something that provides hope and inspiration, and the Tokyo 2020 Olympics was nothing short of that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned there the age of 10. Let's go backwards in your life, because you are a very high achieving young lady, and to explore how you got to that level in sailing. So tell me about your childhood and where your sailing world started.
Sure. So I guess I didn't have a choice in sailing. I did have a choice whether I loved it or not, I think. Yeah. And I actually remember when I made that decision of like, actually, I think I like this, as opposed to I'm forcibly being put in the boat.
Do you remember that moment precisely?
Yes, I remember that moment.
Share that moment with us.
Oh, okay, sure. I was actually a bit older than you might think. I was 15. Yeah. And we were training for a regatta. My dad and I did a lot of sailing with my dad. And I said to him, I just don't want to run. Like, why are you making me run? I hated training. I hated it. I didn't see the point of it. It was a waste of my time. I'm like, why are you making me run? Yeah. I don't run. And to this day, anybody now will say, you can't make her run. Like, I run when I'm running late. That is it. Do not try and make me run. I can do any other exercise you ask of me. I'll run on a netball court. I'll run playing cricket, beach cricket, whatever. I do not just go for a run. It is the worst thing in the world.
Welcome to my world. I am exactly the same.
Oh, really? Perfect. Yeah. So I'm like, what is this? Anyway, I had this moment and Dad said to me, he's like, you have so much potential. Can't you see that if you just put a bit of effort in, you could actually be really good at sailing? And I was like, yeah, it could be. Not running though, but yes, I do like sailing. I could be really good at it. Thank you so much, but still not running.
So who was the one that got you into it?
Dad. Yeah.
Tender age did he do that?
So my mum's favourite story, my parents were quite young when I was born. They were 25. My dad was quite a keen laser sailor. In fact, he sailed from Middle Harbour Amateur Sailing Club, like the best of them back in the 80s. I'm aging myself, but that's fine. Mid-80s to be exact. And he's begging my mum. He's like, come on. I was 10 months old. I've got to go back to sailing. This is ridiculous. I was born in February, so let's count that up. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. I've got to go sailing. I've got to go sailing. That sounds about right, actually.
And just to explain to our listeners, a laser is a single-handed smaller dinghy.
Yeah, a single-handed dinghy, quite serious, Olympic class. And my dad, great boat. We still have two actually. But my dad also was a training partner of a guy called Glenn Burke, who represented Australia at the Olympics in 92. So he's now the CEO of Hamilton Island. Shout out to Uncle Berkey up at Hammer. I'm really sorry.
Yep, we'll be there soon, we promise.
Yeah, I'm really sorry Hamilton Island Race Week isn't happening. Oh, it's really sad. So, yeah, Dad was training partners with Glenn Burke, and he really wanted to get back and he wanted to go sailing. And those of you who know my dad will know that he can't sit still. So Mum said, no worries, darling. Off you go. You go back to sailing. Really? Are you kidding? I was like, no, come on, go back to sailing. You're driving me nuts. Go sailing. And Dad's gone, oh, thank you. You're the best. And she's like, no worries, but you got to take the kid.
I love it.
What? It's my day off too. If you want to go sailing, no problems, but you take Nicole. So, fine, I'll take her. So off we went. And he's reportedly pushing me around the boat park. Does anyone want to look after my baby? Does anyone want to look after my baby? Does anyone want to look after my baby? Anyway, so yeah, he went sailing without a life jacket, put his life jacket on me, gaffer taped me and the life jacket to the mast, and off we went. So
gaffer taped you to the mast. That is quite a story.
So yeah, so there's quite a few sailors from those days that remember me being that kid that was tied round the mast. So yep. Shout out to Nev Whitty, Andrew York, Freddie Phillips.
Do not try this at home, folks. We do not take our children to the mast of a sailing boat, and we certainly don't put them in their dad's life jacket.
No. So naughty. I know. I'm like, there's so much wrong with this story. It's not even funny.
It's a very 80s story, actually.
So 80s.
Those things we used to do in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And anyway, nothing was wrong. It was fine. So we went home and reportedly Dad proudly said to Mum, because she's going, oh, did you go sailing? And he's like, yeah, I did. And I took her with me. And Mum's like, brilliant. You can take her next week.
And there it started.
And there it started.
At an incredibly young age. So when did you actually start sailing or crewing yourself?
So I progressed from being taped to the mast to sitting back in the cockpit. I'm not sure when. Actually, I don't think he pulled that stunt very many times. That was more just a matter of proving something. I used to go on the start boat a lot. Yeah. I had a bit of cork with fishing line around it, like a Barocca tube sort of size of cork with fishing line around it. And
that's really old fishing.
Yeah. And I had a hook. I had no bait, but I'd sit out there all day on the committee, all day in my mind as a young kid. Probably not that long, probably like 4 hours. Yes. And I would sit there and throw my line over, try and fish. I used to go to sleep in the anchor well. And I remember asking Dad when I was older, I was like, what boat was that? And he's like, oh, just a Quintrex tinny. And so I was little enough to go to sleep in the anchor well thing at the front on this Quintrex tinny. So spent most of my time following him around. Story of my life. My mum would argue she's done it more. So when I was about 2.5, I progressed to the cockpit, and Dad made his Vang pink, which was the best thing ever. And it had the really old blocks on the Vang. So that used to be my rope. I was the Vang trimmer then. Me trimming the Vang, in inverted commas, was not really a valid position on the boat. It was literally just pink so that I had something to hang on to when I was sitting in the cockpit. And when we tacked, I would go around the mast and then back into, well, to start with, I'd go under the Vang because I could actually fit under the Vang across the centerboard. Yep. But when I was about, I think I was just before I was 3 because Mum was pregnant with my sister. Dad took me on the marathon race from Middle Harbour Amateur Sailing Club to the Harbour Bridge and back.
Yep.
And that was the last time that I could actually get under the Vang because I got stuck on a tack. It was a big southerly, and I got stuck on a tack just off Bradley's head, and we capsized, and that was my first capsize, for real capsize during a race capsize, not my first capsize. But
your dad remembers that to tell you that?
Well, I remember seeing Bradley's. I remember the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge and everything once we got up again. And then after that, he got me to steer. And then that's when I started tacking around the mast. I remember capsizing because I remember him being like, Nick, where are you? Nick, where are you? Nick, where are you? I'm like, I'm here. It's all good. I can swim. So, but yeah, then that was when I would go around the front. He'd like ready to tack and we'd go around the front. And then on the way back, we were downwind all the way. And I remember Dad being like, point at that, point at that, point at that. And so I'd steer downwind on the laser going downwind. I'm sure he was helping me, but in my mind, I was doing it. So
no, I remember my dad doing that. Point at that bit. Now point at that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a great way of teaching kids.
It's the quintessential learning tool. Point at that.
Yeah, point at that hill over there. Okay, all right, I can do that because it's a point of reference and you just keep heading towards it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I asked questions when I was younger because when I started remembering stuff, I think I was like, is this how it happened? Is this what happened? Is this what happened? He argues I was a bit older than 10 months now and Mum's like, no, you were 10 months.
That is an amazing story.
Yeah. And so has anybody seen Finding Nemo? Because, you know, that site when Nemo comes up and sees the Opera House with the bridge, like I remember that exact moment and it's so cute now because if I'm ever super stressed and I'm at my mum and dad's, Dad will just put Finding Nemo on at that bit of the movie because it's just got this serious calming effect on me.
I'm loving your mum and dad and I haven't even met them. It's
they're my best mates. I love them dearly. I'm very lucky as a 36-year-old woman saying that. But yeah, so they, I just, that view, it stuck in my mind forever. And I've always said, like, even as a 10-year-old, when I die, scatter my ashes off Bradley's head where I had my first capsize. I'm a bit weird like that.
But, no, that's not weird. That's cool.
Yeah. And so I very much remember that moment. We moved away from Sydney when I was 7.5 or so.
Yeah.
We moved down to the south coast of New South Wales.
Whereabouts?
Do you know where Milton Ulladulla is?
Oh, absolutely. I have a house at Mollymook.
So Milton is home for me. So I grew up then sailing offshore from Ulladulla Harbour. So I have reached many a time in nor'easters into Bannister's Head there. So that was my next series of adventures, is sailing down there. So
you sailed out of Ulladulla, or?
Yeah, just out of the harbour there. So I did most of my sailing growing up out of there, or on Lake Conjola, or Baril, or I'm a member still of Jervis Bay Sailing Club, sailed on Saturdays, and Bateman's Bay Sailing Club, sailed on Sundays. So, grew up sailing there.
That is a beautiful part of the world down there that a lot of Sydney-siders don't actually know about. And we kind of keep it secret to ourselves, don't it? Because
I know. Nobody. I don't know where I'm from at all.
Very beautiful
funny
part of the world.
Yeah, indeed.
So you sailed from that. What were you sailing on at that time? What sort of boats?
So when I was 7 and a bit, when we moved down there, Dad bought me a Manly Junior.
They're like what we used to call it. We used to call them a mirror in the UK.
Yeah. So we still have our mirror, which is like it's like twice the size of a Manly Junior.
There you go. I didn't realise that. Can you explain to me why a mirror and the Manly Junior have that? They don't have a
scout
bow. They have a blunt sort of thing.
I don't actually know why. I think it's just the traditional design of boats was to have that scow nose, because boats used to be built out of timber, and it was a lot easier to build the scow nose and then to have the panels underneath, as opposed to trying to make the wood actually go to a point, which is, I think, is the reason, is that it was just difficult to build it that way. Because if you look at yacht design, it changed a lot once fiberglass started coming into play, and they were actually able to glass wood even into that pointed bow shape. But if you think about the design of boats, the pointier bows started to come when steel and fiberglass really started to come into effect. So
the Manly Juniors and mirrors were very cost-effective boats. They're very price-wise, they're really cost-effective. So I guess that's another part of it. They were cheaper to make that way.
Yeah. So my dad sailed Manly Juniors. I think he was national champion in 1976 in a boat that he built with his dad. So his dad sailed as well. And so the Manly Junior that my dad bought me was super cost effective because it was older than his last Manly Junior. Gosh, she's nice to me. Had a wooden mast, a wooden rudder, a wooden centerboard, and all the kids that I was racing against had fiberglass boats with fiberglass boards. And Dad's like, you're going to learn to sail. You're going to learn to sail on a crap boat, because then a good boat will be even better. Just like,
look, your dad was consistently building resilience in you, I can tell.
Imagine what would have happened if I had a good boat.
He's actually a great father. He's built a very strong woman.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. And so I sailed the Manly Junior. I had a bit of an accident when I was 12, 13, so I missed a bit of sailing. But Dad came back from the Laser Worlds in 96. And he had a second over there, and then decided that was the last Worlds he could do in 96 with a weight belt. Yeah. And he's not very big, so he used to wear a kilo on his front, and he's like, I can't do this without weight. So for those listening that might not understand what I'm talking about, there used to be something that you could wear when you were sailing dinghies at a serious level, and it was basically a life jacket that they'll put water in. to put extra weight on their body to add to the ballast so that they could have a greater effect at flattening out the boat. And that became illegal in 96.
Okay, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so the 97 to 2000 rules came out for the leading into the 2000 games, and weight belts became illegal. So that's when he went, I'm not sailing the laser anymore, and came back and got a taser, which is a 2-person boat. I was 11. So we went and did our first Worlds together that Christmas in Melbourne. The Worlds happened to be in Melbourne. There were 109 boats, 108 boats because 109 was a DNF. And it was my first major regatta, and Dad was fresh back from Malaysia Worlds, so was, ready to rock. And here's the 11-year-old 30-kilo girl going, what is going on? This is ridiculous. I remember crying to Mum and being like, do I have to do this? Because it blew 25 knots every day.
Oh, my goodness.
220 degrees. It was written on the deck, 220 degrees, 20 knots every day. And we were so light.
Was it choppy too?
Yeah, it was wavy. I remember going downwind and just having my eyes shut, and Dad would put his leg over the top of me in the hiking straps just to lock me in because I was quite little. I couldn't get my bottom to the edge of the boat to actually hike. Like I was that little. And so he just put his leg over me and be like, hold on. And I'm like, because we'd make up heaps of boats downwind because we were right on minimum weight of 130.
Yeah.
My job as an 11-year-old was to pull the jib on and rotate the mast, neither of which I could do. So Dad was rotating the mast and trimming the jib and trimming the main and hiking the boat flat because I was pretty much useless. So, and crying to my mum, do I really have to do this? And her probably thinking, well, I'm not doing it. Would your dad do anything to hurt you? No, he wouldn't. And I'd go again. Anyway, oh my God.
Yes, manic. I have similar memories.
Yeah. So so code flag 1 was an upwind finish. Yeah. Code flag 2 was the best flag in the world because Dad would be so happy because we'd pass people going downwind to the finish.
Yes.
And that's blue with a white dot. And so that's when I learned my code flags.
Oh, wow.
My numeral pennants. Please be 2. Please be 2. Please be 2. Sitting there freezing going, please be 2. Please be 2. So, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yes,
I remember as a crew on a dinghy, you get very wet, you get very cold, you get very salty eyes. Oh, my goodness, your eyes are stinging like you wouldn't believe, aren't they, from the water splashing into them all the time. And Dad's just going, well, I'm fine. Yeah, that's because you're behind me.
I remember when I got older and I sort of knew what was going on around 15 when I sort of twigged. Like I remember him being like, come on, let's do this. I'm like, yeah, come on. Blah, blah, blah. And like literally because you're the crew, he's using you as a roadblock as well. So like a wave comes and he's like hiding behind me and I'm like, you bastard. It's ridiculous. Anyway, it took a little
special memories.
Such special memory. Anyway, we ended up doing every nationals in that boat for 25 years. Following on from that regatta. So we've done a lot of sailing together.
Wow.
We won our first Worlds together in 2005. So, 8 or 9 years later.
And you're current world champion for Taser, right?
Yeah. So we won our first in 2005. There were 131 boats, one start line. That was pretty full on. The next year we came second. And then the next year we won again, or the next time it's biannual in the Taser. The next time we won again, which was in Japan. That was in 2009.
Gosh.
And then and we had a series of podium finishes in between then and 2019 and won the Worlds in Hayling Island. So that was amazing. 10 years after the last win and Dad was 62 and was he 60, 61, 60, however old. He was in his 60s and the guy that we had to beat essentially, another Australian came second, but we match raced the guy that came third and we match raced him hard, which pushed him back down the the board, and he was the training partner of Dylan and Stu in the 49er, who just won a gold medal. So,
wow. What's your take home from sailing? What do you love most about it?
Oh, that's such a hard question when I think I kind of live my life for this sport in a lot of ways. I think that the community is the most beautiful thing. It can also be quite punishing because it's quite tight. But for the most part, for me, the reason why I do this is for the community, and because it can give so much to so many different people. I think back to April when we were doing some sailing with autistic sailors, and that was with the Making Waves Foundation in Sydney. And that was just absolutely beautiful what they managed to receive on that day in terms of joy. So I love the community for what it can provide. I'm also really thankful for the fact that I was born into this family. As much as I pay my family out, I'm incredibly grateful for the resilience, but also, that worlds that I spoke about that I didn't really love. By the time I was 15, I decided that I really did love it, and it was something that I could make of myself. But as a guy that came from doing incredibly well at a world championship in a competitive class, he could have picked up any 18-year-old, 20-year-old guy and, come top 5 of that world's, no problems. But instead, my dad, God love him, picked up his 11-year-old daughter and went, well, this is going to be a bloody struggle, but, it might make her love it. So I'm eternally grateful to him, but also to my mum for chasing us both around the world for many years to come.
An incredible amount of support from family, doesn't it, to get to your level?
And now my poor partner, Andrew, because, Dad and I still have boats together. Now he's following us around with my mum as well.
Is he a sailor too?
No. I mean, he's been sailing with us. Very cool, actually. I think it was one of the last times I went sailing was February this year on my VX1 with Dad and Andrew offshore from Mollymook, and it was a nor'easter, and we were ripping down past the beach with the spinnaker up, and he was just like, this is awesome. And I'm like, yeah it is.
It is a certain feeling of freedom sailing.
Absolutely.
You don't get to experience. I mean, you probably do if you jump out of a plane, but I've never done that. But that the fact that it's purely nature that is pushing you along and you're totally exposed in the ocean. I mean, it's a wonderful sensation.
Yeah, the last time I raced was in February as well. I did the Etchells Milson's Goblets, and Etchell is a small keel boat, and the Goblets is a big regatta out of the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron at Kirribilli. But other than that, the only sailing that I have done this year has been literally offshore, just going for burns. And last year during the major lockdown, Dad and I would go offshore in our lasers. We're like, we're socially distancing, like 2 kilometres offshore, socially distancing.
Well, thankfully, those in the the government, they did allow sailing to be something recreation that you could do, because it is a form of exercise, and 100%. It is, it's a wonderful thing to be able to do safely away from people as well. So thankfully that was allowed, which was fantastic.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I can't even comprehend how much the Australian government and related states are actually dealing with everything that's going on right now in Australia. But I am thankful that they're still letting us have however many minutes of exercise. When I was in Japan, I was only allowed outside for 15 minutes a day. I think having that respite to go and actually have a walk and a breather, or a sail, or a paddle, or a fish, or play with your dog in the park, which is my favourite thing to do personally at the moment, although I haven't seen my dog in ages. That is something that's so important for sanity. And I think that's why Andrew, maybe he's not a racing sailor, but he's a sailor at heart. And there's a lot of us that will associate with loving being in the outdoors and the ultimate goal for all of us at this point. And hey, let's have a dream is I'm going to buy a yacht and go up to the Whitsundays and sail around the reef.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what we all want to do.
Or let's just buy a super yacht and live on it.
Exactly.
And not see anyone.
100%. I've literally had this chat. I think the text message from Andrew this morning was, how much do you think an island is? And I said, a boat is cheaper. Exactly. I know some people.
A boat is cheaper and I can change the view.
Exactly. So, and again, that's why sailing is such a beautiful sport. So if anybody's listening to this and they're thinking about getting involved with sailing, the cool thing is, hopefully, COVID pending, you'll be able to go and just drop into a sailing club one day and just put your name up on the board and go for a twilight and see what it's all about. You don't have to pay a bunch of money for a course or, whatever it might be. You'll find somebody just walking the docks at a yacht club if you say, hey, I'd really like to go for a sail. Can you take me for a sail? It's highly likely you'll get a ride there. We're pretty friendly bunch. We're also incredibly competitive on the water, but we're a pretty friendly bunch at the end of the day. We like to finish things off with a gin or a beer, depends on your poison. If you are thinking about it, I can say it's a beautiful community and it's a sport for life. So give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I read an article in which Ian Murray was interviewed the other day. He has 3 daughters himself that he introduced to sailing.
They're lovely.
But they didn't follow his love of sailing. And I think he's a little bit upset about that on a personal level, but also he's trying to understand why girls do that and how we can fix that. Do you have any ideas for that process?
I think some girls will naturally gravitate towards some things and some other things. And I think I'm one of those people that likes to do the hard problems first and then the easy ones in an exam. So I'm probably somebody who's sort of drawn to the challenge. I think that Ian, at the end of the day, will say that he's proud of his girls no matter what.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But whether you get them to sail or not, I mean, my dad got 1 out of 3 and I think he's lucky because I'm a bit of a masochist. I think the thing for female sailors has been previously you have to give up a lot to actually do well in it.
Yep.
It's been a bit easier, and I'm not saying easy, it's been a bit easier for guys to be able to juggle a career and being a sailor. I think that has been a definite issue, and I know that in myself. I pretty much had to choose sailing or career.
Right.
And I'm very lucky. I sort of spoiled myself with both, and I just made the choice. I just finished my first degree, did an internship during my first degree, which was in advertising and PR at the UTS with M&C Saatchi. They offered me a full-time job, and I was 21. Went, freelance? Because I still wanted to try and give sailing a go. So I think even if it's not the way that it is, it was the perception that it was. What had to happen was that the girls had to put everything in to go for those few spots that were available. And then even when I was good and I was committed, I wasn't tall enough. There were always a bunch of limitations because there was nothing in between. It was either, you're a junior sailor, you're a youth sailor. Are you going to the Olympics? No? Okay, bye.
Wow.
There was no other real pathway. I think for me that there's so much focus at the moment on getting women into those high performing spots.
Yes.
And I'm sort of like, what about the intermediate? Because there's a whole bunch of women that maybe want to sail at national championship and world championship level, but they don't have the time to go and do the sail GP. They don't want to do a Volvo. They might want to have kids as well, but still go and do a nationals and do better at their nationals. They might, they don't want to go and do an America's Cup campaign and work for ages in the shore crew before they even get a chance to go sailing on the boat. So I think that, yes, it's amazing that we're getting more roles at the top, but I think it's like anything, until you get roles in the middle, there's no stepping stone. And for girls, and I should say women and ladies and not just girls, at the moment they're sailing for girls and they're sailing for women on a twilight boat maybe, or maybe if they've managed to get through that pathway with some sort of wiggledy, higgledy, piggledy jumping from boat to boat thing, had a family member that stuck up for them, had a friend that stuck up for them, managed to get onto a youth match racing team, which has carried them through to, an Olympic program of some nth degree, then it's really, really hard to upskill. And until we can find the way to upskill everybody in terms of women, we'll never be on an equal playing field with men. And, if I was putting together the best team ever to win a boat race, who would you choose? There are a bunch of women I'd put on the team now, but maybe 20 years ago that wouldn't have been the case. Yeah. So we're getting better. I just do think there needs to be a big focus on pathways for youth other than Olympics, so that they have somewhere else to go. And that's the case for men and women, I think.
Yeah.
Because especially for Ian Murray's kids, I'm sure they were so talented. Eliza was a great 29er sailor. I remember her other half is a professional sailor. He's with the Sail GP team. He's a professional sailor, and she's been there, done that. She's seen how hard it is even for the guys. So doing it as a girl, it's hard yakka.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you say that you had to choose between career and sailing, but in actual fact, you created a career out of sailing now, haven't you?
Yeah,
so
I couldn't help it.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure can. I guess I bounced in between and out and in and out and in. I'm a bit of a nerd though, so I always did my study all the way along as well. So I'm very lucky when I was involved in the Olympic program leading into 2012, but I got cut just beforehand because I was too short. So I went and took a job at the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority, and I worked with them for a number of years. And whilst I was doing that, I had already gotten my graduate diploma in marketing by that time, but then I did my postgraduate in psychology as well whilst I was there. And then
you're such a underperformer, Nick.
I ended up working again in government, but then I was sort of like, I got a little bit of an itch. So I got a transfer in government to work for, I looked after 3 federal government commissioners, privacy, information and freedom of information at the Office of the Information Commissioner. And
a fascinating role.
It was quite interesting actually. So I worked there for 3 years. And while I was doing that, I started sailing the 470 quite a bit and really loved that. I was helming instead of crewing and still doing the taser as well, but started steering the taser. So Dad and I did a few nationals where we were reversed as well. And so that was good fun. I had a variety of female crews, but at the end of the day, it was just too hard and too expensive. And I think I'd already exhausted my energy to do the Olympics after the first, or I tried before that in the Yingling and gotten injured, and then I tried in the match racing, and then I tried in the 470 wasn't a real crack, but I did sail it. I did do the circuit for a year or so, but my heart wasn't fully in it. So at the same time, I sort of started doing a radio show. When 2012 was on, I was really disappointed with the TV coverage here. We had Matt and Malcolm in the 470. We had Tommy Slingsby in the laser. We had Nathan Outeridge and Ian Jensen in the 49er. We had the match racing girls, and I'd been part of that squad. And so the girls got silver, everyone else got a gold. Lisa Tesh and Dan Fitzgibbon in the Paralympics got a gold medal. Buggy got a bronze in the 2.5. So it was just an amazing Olympics for the Australians. And at the Office of the Information Commissioner, I had a poster of I'd like a laminated A4 sheet of the heads of all of the sailors on it. And I would say to everybody, these guys, they're going to get more medals than the swimmers. You watch. I feel like, okay, like to anybody who had listened, and yeah, not many listened. But then after they'd be like, you were right. And I was like, oh, funny. I know that, right? But during that games, I was up all night. And so I was tweeting what was happening, and I was Skyping people in the village and getting information about what was happening and telling everybody on my Twitter and my campaign blog, which was called Adventures of a Sailor Girl, because I hated training.
Yeah.
As previously mentioned, so every time that we went training, my dad would take me on adventures, and I was the only girl at my yacht club as well. So hence the nickname Girly, and Sailor Girl came pretty fast. I guess it was quite sexist, but Sailor Girl was always my name. So I didn't think it was sexist. I loved it. And I took advantage of it.
I like it.
Yeah. So that very quickly, my campaign blog, and you can look all the way back to blogs on my website that I wrote as a 19-year-old going, I think I'm going to win the Worlds next year. Like, it's pretty
wow,
funny.
that's awesome.
It's pink. Like, the text is pink. There's smiley faces everywhere. It's now like a full-on professional news site. But
is it Lucy de Son's top font as well?
Yeah. It's like slanted and it looks like running. Oh, my God, it's terrific. Anyway, it's still there. I've left them all there because I can't get rid of them. And so, you know, the blog goes back that far, but during 2012, I was like, right. And so instead of it being a personal blog, it just became, this person's doing this. This person's doing this. Follow this person here. You can watch this here. Here's a photo. Here's this. Here's that. And all of a sudden I was like, wow. And so then I got asked to do a radio show on community radio in Sydney on sailing. And that was on Saturday mornings. So I started doing that and very quickly realized that most people were listening online via my Facebook page. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Wonder if I don't have to do this on a Saturday morning, which is really annoying. Maybe I could do this at another time. and then so came the podcasts, and pretty much decided, okay, I'm going to build a radio station in my lounge room, which I did. And then I was like, hang on a minute, I could probably have a crack at this full time. And the first year was really hard. I didn't leave Australia, but I did a podcast every week, and I interviewed sailors from all over the world. That was in 2014 by the time this came around. I still did a show every week, which was called Sailing Chicks before the Adventures of a Sailor Girl podcast went live in 14. But yeah, 14 I did.
That's a long time ago for a podcast.
Yeah, I was new.
Yeah.
So that was the original podcast. You can listen back, but it's cool because I'm interviewing people like Matt Belcher and Jason Waterhouse and Tom Slingsby and Ian Murray and, you know, all these guys that we still talk about, and girls like Stacey Jackson and Katie Spithill and Nina Curtis, who's on the SailGP team that I just commentated with. So, you know, it's really funny how I have now this archive of interviews with people over a really extended period of time, which is quite nice, actually, sort of like a timeline. So that's sort of where it came from, and it started there and then morphed into video and and then getting involved with helping other events as well and to lift their profile, because ultimately the goal was I'm going to create a network which will help rent a crowd to as many regattas as I can help, or as many organizations as I can help. And and that was a long time ago. I made the Facebook page in 2011, so it's 10 years old now. And, you know, I started the blog Adventures of a Sailor Girl as an MSN space in 2004, which then became a WordPress site. And then I transferred it over to Nick Douglas. So it's all morphed. And then all of a sudden podcasts became cool again. And I was like, oh, all right. So whipped out all the old ones, you know. Like,
I love
it. It's really funny how the media space has changed, but also not changed, because people still like reading. They still like listening. They still like watching. It just depends on the medium as to what and the message and the timeliness as to what what medium's best. I think podcasts are really cool for things like this, where you can go more in depth with people. If people want live stuff, though, it's all about the immediacy of it. Then they're straight wanting video, wanting pictures, wanting it now. And so, shout out to everybody who sometimes gets a bit frustrated with any broadcasters for not getting stuff to you as soon as they can. Trust me, they're getting it to you as soon as they can. But yeah, there is more we can do. And it was interesting. The Rolex Fastnet race just happened, and I did a show on that last night, recapping it.
Yep.
And
that's in the UK, right?
Yeah, in the UK. It used to be from Cowes to Plymouth, but now it's from Cowes to Cherbourg. This is the first year of the new track. But yes, the first one I've missed. So this is I've done past 3 out of 4. So it was really interesting not being there, but the amount of audio-visual content that is now available when you're not on site is massive.
Well, one of my good friends, Jason, was photographing that race.
Oh, wow.
He's done some beautiful photographs of it.
Oh, it was nuts. It was so rough at the start.
Yes. Yeah. And it was such a dramatic start, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the photographs of it are just quite. Jason Ludlow is his name. If anybody wants to look him up on Instagram. Do you know?
Yeah, I've probably met him at some point. I miss that part of the world. I usually do Cows Week each year. I haven't missed Cows Week since 2014. And so it was weird not being there, but I was very proud that so many of the finishes were live streamed, because I did the first live stream of a Fastnet finish ever. And
look at you.
Yeah, well, I just think it's amazing, because now they do it. And I'm like, I mean, you could be like, I've stolen my idea. And yes, they have. But yes, I forced them to have a better standard of media coverage.
Exactly right.
So what I started
the movement, Nick. You started the movement.
So what I've started, maybe I'm not making any money, but I'm making people cover regattas with better efficiency and more visuals for us all.
Well, I think it's far better to leave a legacy of creating things like that than a legacy of money, right? So
yeah, I hope so, because otherwise I'm in big trouble.
Differences like that in the sailing world is just fantastic. So you've obviously just come back doing the coverage of the Olympic sailing. How did that opportunity come around for you?
Oh, gosh, I was lucky. So I got this email in my inbox. Hi, we're representing the organisation. We are really interested in you coming and being the English announcer. We heard you're available. I wrote back and said, I am available. Yeah, I'm interested. And so then I'm going to the family, so it really won't be that bad. And, COVID's fine. And I'm going to be vaccinated. And, the dog will be fine. And I had to
backpedal.
Erect scaffolding in the hole that I dug myself. I have a program on my phone called Duolingo. Have you heard of it? It's like
I've heard of that.
Yeah. So I was learning Japanese. And then when the Olympics I thought the Olympics were going to get cancelled, I swapped to French. And then the Olympics were back on again. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then they're like, no, they're still going ahead. They're just postponed a year. Oh, back to Japanese. And then my job.
Which can you speak better now, Japanese or French?
Japanese, I think. Then the job got cancelled, and I was too scared. I was like, nah, not swapping to French. The Olympics won't happen. Like, I need to leave it on Japanese. This is a problem. So I left it on Japanese, and it wasn't until I didn't use it because I was like, I can't learn it, but I need to keep it on Japanese. And so then on my way home on the plane coming back to Australia, I finally swapped it over to French. I was like, yeah, I can swap it to French now. It's all good. But like anything I do has an influence on whether an Olympic Games goes ahead or not. But anyway.
That's great. So, all right. So concluding your amazing career, your incredible achievements on the world stage in sailing, what would you like to share with our listeners as potential boaters, current boaters, what do you think is the pathway that they can take if they have absolutely no experience in sailing? So well, let's take a young girl, and she wants to get into sailing. How's the best way she can do that?
The best way you can do that is, no matter where you are in the world, find your local yacht club and find out when they do their casual racing. So I'm not talking about winter series racing or Saturday serious stuff. Like, find out. They'll have a night, most likely. And if it's not the one right near you, it might be a bit further. Find out when they do their casual racing and put your name down on the board, because there'll be a board or an online board or something, and put your name down and say, I'd really like to go for a sail. When you get on a boat, and because you will, because people are always looking for crew, especially when it's windy, be helpful. You might not know anything, but be helpful and ask questions, because the more questions you ask, the more you will learn. And when you ask questions and you look like you really want to get involved and you're really keen, there'll be somebody on that boat who takes a liking to you and they'll really want to help you. So get under their wing and annoy the crap out of them and learn as much as you can. And that's if you really want to get involved. You might go sailing for your first time and go, nah, it's not for me. Or, you know, this level is fine for me. I don't need to go any further. And that's totally fine too. There are no rules on how much or how little you have to engage with this sport. And that's why it is the best sport in the world for me, because I think it's why so many sailors also get involved with paddleboarding or skiing and, you know, other recreational sports like that, because you can get involved as much or as little as you like. You can be like my amazing partner who just wants to come cruising with me offshore and then go and have a beer. And at the snow, he doesn't even go out and ski. He literally sits inside working all day, and he's active as hell. Like in summer, he'll be riding his mountain bike up and down that mountain like a nutcase, but he just doesn't want to ski. And that's totally fine too, because you can go on a holiday and you don't have to go sailing. You know, it's one of those sports that you can enjoy alone, you can enjoy as a couple, you can enjoy it with your mates. And if you really, really love it and you're a diehard like me and a bunch of other people I know, you can go as far as you like and give back to it as much as you like too. So it's a volunteer, community-driven sport, which has its pros and cons. But if you show passion and initiative and you're genuinely interested, everybody will see that, and you will find somebody who will become somebody that you will be friends with for life and will help you as much as they can.
And that community you spoke of earlier that you've created, can you tell us a bit about how we get involved in that?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And by no means don't be afraid of what I post there. My Adventures of Sailor Girl channels could get quite serious. I actually, I'm not sure if you've heard of an app called Clubhouse. We have quite a bit of chat on an app called Clubhouse, which is quite communal. There's a sailing club on Clubhouse as well, which I'm quite involved with. I run a weekly chat on Tuesday mornings. It's all across the world, which is really fun. And people engage as much or as little as they want to. So that's a pretty cool community there. So you can find me on Clubhouse as Sailor Girl or Nick Douglas. I'm on there if you want to just come and have a chat with like-minded people or find out about clubs in your area, because there are people all over the world there. So I can recommend that to you. And it might not be my room. You might find another room in the sailing club that's talking about something that interests you. Also on Instagram, at Sailor Girl HQ is my work page. At Nick Douglas is my personal page, where you can see things like my beautiful Arc de Triomphe in the corner over here, which is a tower made out of takeaway bags. Thank you, Hotel Quarantine. Or you can follow us on Facebook, Adventures of a Sailor Girl. Adventures of a Sailor Girl is also on iTunes. The podcast is there. There's a YouTube channel as well. Or you might just like to go to the website and read articles, which is sailorgirlhq.com. Pretty much Sailor Girl HQ on every single channel you can imagine, and we'll be there. So
you are one busy girl. Thank you so much for your time, Nick. It's been lovely talking to you today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me. And I hope I've managed to cheer you up, and also whomever else is listening to this. I know that life's been tough, but don't be afraid to act like it is tough and it's not a competition. Reach out and make everybody feel better, and don't be afraid to say whether you are struggling as well, because I think that's super important at the moment too.
That's very good advice, Nick. We appreciate that. And it's been lovely. It's been our advantage that you're in lockdown, because we've been able to have a lovely long chat with you.
No, it's been lovely to talk to you and learn a little bit more about what you're doing too. So I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and hopefully we've definitely got a new fan in me, so I'll be listening.
Oh, thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. Ditto. Take care, sweetheart. See you soon. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Boat Princess podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you'd like to know more about what I do and where I am, then you can follow me on Instagram at The Boat Princess. You can also sign up to my newsletter on my website, which is theboatprincess.com. And in doing so, you'll actually receive a code so that you can instantly enjoy complimentary from Ocean Magazine, their digital subscription until January 2022. That magazine is absolutely fantastic, beautifully put together, so much information about new boat models coming out, luxury lifestyle items, and what's going around all over the world in the boating industry. So just go to my site at www.theboatprincess.com, sign up for my newsletter, and you'll receive that gift from myself and Ocean Magazine. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you on the water soon.